Good morning, everyone. It's a blessing to be here once again to share with you our weekly Sunday school lesson. Today I'm videotaping from Los Angeles. I'm down here with my family, and we're just taking a break, if you will. And so I had a quick break from them to come and share with you in our weekly Sunday school lesson. I really pray you read these lessons. These lessons are so phenomenal. There's no way I can share with you the beauty of all of the story or the details. You must read it on your own. Read the book of Judges on your own so that when you listen to my summary, you can get some ideas. I pray that there's some time that we can, assume we will get together, that be in my Sunday school class, and we can review these lessons. I pray that these lessons bless you as they blessed me. They help me to understand why God do the things he do. He is a God of mystery, and he does what he wants to do. But when you read his word, you get a better understanding of why things happen and how things happen. And so today we share the final judge, which is Samson, in the quarter, and we're wrapping it up this Sunday. We talked last Sunday about the beginning of Samson's life and how the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord remembered them, and he raised up Samson. And so we covered his wanting to get revenge. And so today we're going to learn how being tempted and being in a situation of temptation caused him to lose his life early. The subject of our lesson this morning, Samson's final victory. Our writer selected the 30th verse as the spotlight as I read for you. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And he bowed himself with all his might, and the house fell upon the lords and upon the people that were therein. So the dead which he slew at his death were more than they which he slew in his life. Again, that's the 30th verse of the 16th chapter, which is the spotlight. And so this morning I'm going to share the fact, the principle, and the application first. Sometimes I do it last, sometimes I do it first. And so today I'm going to do it previous to us going into our story, because I want you to take notice of what the purpose of our lesson is while you hear the story, and then you can extract from it what you need for your life and your story. The fact of the lesson is to know that giving in to temptation will always lead to bad results. You know right from wrong. You know when you are tempted to do wrong. And when you give in to wrong, bad things happen. The principle of the lesson is to reveal that a wise person will learn to rely on the Lord and to turn to him when being tempted. And so when you're in a tempting situation, or you're being tempted, you will call on the Lord and rely on the Lord. Now understand, when you are in the enemy's territory, you will be tempted. And so the first wise action is to avoid the enemy's territory. The application of our lesson this morning is to make a point to ask God to help us resist temptation every day, instead of thinking we can battle it by ourselves. You cannot battle the enemy, especially when you're on his territory. He has been around since the Lord created him. He is very wise. He knows how to tempt you. And when you again on the enemy's territory, you will be tempted. So avoid that. And if you find yourself there, rely on the Lord to help you, because you cannot battle it on your own. Let's go to our lesson today. I will set the historical backdrop before we go into our spotlighted lesson. We talked briefly last Sunday about the beginning, how Samson came about. We understand that he is a Nazirite, and he cannot cut his hair, and the hair is not what orchestrates the strength. It's the avoiding of cutting of the hair is a symbol of a covenant between him and the Lord. He is not to cut his hair and as long as he keeps this covenant, the Lord makes him exceptionally strong. Samson is the strongest man who ever lived, and this is a very interesting story, and so we want to get into that story. And so we talked about last week again that he got married to a Philistine woman. Now again, Samson goes into the enemy camp 3 times with 3 different women, and that is quite a bit of temptation. First he marries one and loses her, and then in between last week's lesson and this week's lesson, he goes to Gaza, Philistine territory, and while he's there, we don't know why he goes there, but while he's there, he visits this Philistine prostitute. While he's visiting her, the Philistine lords, leaders, military leaders all find out, and they decide they're going to kill him at daybreak. He learns of it, and he attempts to leave the city, but the city is on lockdown. Well, he breaks the gates, both left and right side of the gate and the posts, with the strength that the Lord gives him, and he carries it all on his back up a hill and gets victory over the Philistines. And so that sets the backdrop, historical backdrop, on where we are beginning our lesson today. Time passes. He goes back into the Philistine territory, and he falls in love with this Philistine woman. Her name is Delilah. So Samson and Delilah is a very famous story. Again, please read this story, read the details. The devil is in the details. I love the details, and I can't share all the details with you, so I'm encouraging you to please read it. And so he's with Delilah. He loves Delilah, and the Philistine lords, they get wind of this relationship, and they go to Delilah and they say, find out what his strength is and we will pay you. And they offer her money. And so when she begins to ask Samson, what is your strength? And Samson gives her a story, and she verifies it, and it's not the truth. She tries it again, and she verifies it, it's not the truth. She does it a 3rd time and asks him, and he lies about it. And so after the 3rd time, she cries and says, you mocked me these 3 times and have not told me wherein your great strength lies. And she cries and she pesters him, and day after day after day. That's what happens when you in the enemy's camp. You are going to be tempted. You are going to be tempted. And so he gives in and he tells her, I am a Nazarite from my birth. I have a covenant with the Lord. My hair cannot be cut. That covenant allows me to have this superhuman strength. And so he goes to sleep, and she has his head shaven. And when he wakes up, he no longer has the strength. And she calls the Philistines. They come. They arrest him and puts him in prison. They put his eyes out so he can't see to escape, and his strength is gone. And they use him as a human beast, and they're celebrating. They're having a wonderful time. Samson taunted them for 20 years, and now they have victory over their enemy. And so whenever you have victory over your enemy, you have this celebration. And so they plan this celebration. All of the Philistine lords and the military leaders and their wives, they have the celebration. And during the celebration, they call Samson to come and entertain them. And so while time had passed, Samson was incarcerated for a couple of months. His hair began to grow back. And we don't know whether or not he was praying and seeking the Lord. But during this celebration, they were worshiping their god, Dagon. And so because Samson was always in the middle, in the enemy's camp, sampling the enemy's fruit and loving the enemy's women, they were able to give glory to their God instead of giving glory to the God of Israel. And so at that event, Samson was guided by a little boy, and he asked the little boy, after after entertaining them, take me to the supporting pillars of this building. I just need to rest on them. I need to rest on them. And so the little boy guided him because he could not see. His eyes were pulled out. His eyes were burnt out. And he took him to the pillars and he leaned up with all his strength and he prayed and he says, Lord, give me strength. Remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen me, I pray thee. Only this once, O God. And God heard his cry, and God heard his prayer, and he pushed with all his might, and the pillars of the building fell, and all of the Philistine lords and their wives and the military leaders were destroyed, and Samson lost his life as well. But the beauty of it is that the Israelites were able to come and give him a proper burial. And so we see Samson like cut short because he was always being tempted, because he was always in the enemy's camp. He could have done so much more. What does this say to you? What do you learn from this lesson? I want you to think about this. I want you to think about the lesson and how it applies to your life. And how often are we obeying the Lord and we're avoiding the enemy's camp and the enemy's territory and the things that belong to the enemy? When you dabble with the enemy's toys, you are going to be tempted to sin. And this lesson lets us know what it costs you. It costs you relationship. It costs you your life. It may be cut off. It may be not as detriment, but when God has a commitment with you, everyone has a ministry. In other words, everyone has a gifting. They have something that the Lord has given them to use to be a blessing to yourself and to be a blessing to others. And the Lord wants you to use that to give him glory and not the enemy glory. And so today, I encourage you to be wise, to ask the Lord to keep you from the enemy's camp, to keep you from temptation. When we pray, the Lord's Prayer says, deliver us from evil. And it talks about deliver us from temptation. And so we pray that every day. Let that be your prayer. Let that be your prayer. So today we end the story of Samson. He does get victory over the Philistine. But he loses his life. And so I encourage you today to continue in prayer and to avoid temptation. For yielding to temptation is sin. God bless you. Until next week, we will be in the book of Samuel. We will transition from the judge period into the nobility, where the children of Israel now are having kings. I love you. I hope you have a wonderful and a safe 4th of July. Until next week.